Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Two Trannies Talk with me, Kim Justice, and...
Sophia Botha!
Hey! It's good to finally do our episode this week. A little later than usual, but that will become clear shortly. So, what have you been doing this week, Soph?
Well, first of all, what have you been doing? I enjoyed watching your what was it, the Last Bronx, Last Bronx video.
Thanks.
Which I thought was very interesting because, you know, I know a lot of cynics go, well, it's just another fighting game, so what? But you explained that this game actually was a reflection about where Japan was culturally in the 90s. And I thought that was very interesting. And you also explained why it wasn't a success in the West, due to the fact that it was meant to be on page 3, promoted by the page 3 of the Star.
Yes.
But then Princess Di had to go and, well, die.
Yeah.
And basically that was curtailed.
I mean, whether like the game would have been a success with such a page 3 campaign if Diana hadn't died, I mean, who knows? That's kind of neither beholder. No one can say that for certain, but I don't know. It seemed like that month, I guess, September of 1997. Yeah, well, there wasn't really much else at all going on in that month, was there?
Oh Christ, I remember the whole hysteria. Yeah, I remember it very well.
Yeah, same.
I mean, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Republican. For the Americans watching, Republican does not mean what you think it means. It means abolition of the monarchy in this country. But I will say, I can understand what the country. For me, what I remember was it was a lot of people were using Princess Di's death for an outpouring of their own grief about whatever was going on in their life. That's what I remember.
I think you get that quite a bit with, well, certain celebrities' deaths. I think Jade Goody is perhaps another one that springs to mind.
Oh, God, Jade fucking Goody. Let me explain something about Jade Goody. If Jade Goody had got a second opinion, rather than go on the Australian version of of Celebrity Big Brother or whatever it was, she'd still be alive now.
Yeah,
she died of cervical cancer, and cervical cancer is actually fairly curable. If she had gone to the fucking doctor as she should have done, she'd still be alive.
Yeah, most likely.
As for Princess Di, well, you know, I could have the opinion, well, she's a Sloane Ranger who got lucky, but I think she got caught up in the whole melee of the royal family and probably wasn't well equipped to deal with it. And the fact that, you know, Princess Charles didn't really love her.
No, not really.
Someone else.
It's kind of a shitty deal.
I kind of, you can honestly feel sorry for her, you know. As for what I've been doing this week, well, I did write a couple of articles, usually about the usual stuff about in challenging transphobes. And then about half an hour after I wrote the last one, I was taking a walk into town, and I suffered a heart attack. Yeah. This is why we've been a little delayed in doing this week's episode. And of course, I know there's going to be comments going, oh, no, you didn't suffer a heart attack. You know, you've been in hospital if you suffered a heart attack. It was a mild heart attack. And there was nothing wrong with my heart, but it was caused by another problem I was having, namely a blood clot, and which I didn't know I had. And believe me, if I hadn't dealt with it there, you know, if it hadn't got dealt with there and then, I would be dead now. Okay. And believe me, there have been people who have had heart attacks and probably not even realised they've had it. They just think it's a bit of bad indigestion. The story I always like is the lead singer of the Exploited, Watty, who is a mad bastard anyways. Actually, on stage during an exploited gig and carried on with the gig.
I mean, it happened
to
it happened to my dad as well. I mean, my dad is still alive now. Probably about 15 or so years ago. Like, he just had like a bit of pain one day and was like, "Oh, don't know what that was." Carried on with things, and then it was only like sometime later that when like he went to doctors on something that they said, "Oh, you've had a mild heart attack."
Yeah, wasn't the guy, the head of Gremlin Interactive? Did he have a heart attack on top of a mountain?
He did, yes. Yeah, it's a pretty gnarly story, really, because it was quite a bad one. He had a heart attack, and he was there on the mountain with his daughter, who wasn't like a strong skier, and they were on the top of the mountain just as like an avalanche. Well, not like a storm was coming in, but somehow they managed to get down the mountain, and and he went to hospital. I think he had like a quadruple heart bypass.
Yeah. Well, lucky enough, I'm not going to need anything like that, but it does make you think. You know, it is one of those things which happens in your life, and it does give you pause for thought. You know, I mean, the next time I order a double cheeseburger with extra cheese and bacon for dessert, I'll ask them to just pass me the defibrillator.
Yeah, just in case. Yeah, pretty stressful week, as you can imagine.
Yes. And if any evil bastard say that I'm lying or whatever else, we'll do an evil bastard troll edition where we'll show you up, because believe me, I've had a lot of pain, and Alice has been to see me this week. Okay, yeah, it was not pleasant, and I mean, when you came to see me, I could hardly breathe, could I?
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm fortunate to be home now. You know, and hopefully, if I take it easy over the next few months, I'll make a full recovery.
Yeah, just got to
and before anyone says it's because I'm a fat bastard, don't you think I know that? Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to mention the person's name, but I did get a call while I was lying on a trolley in Casualty after I'd managed to text. After I managed to post, on Facebook that I'd had a heart attack, someone rang me while I was lying on a trolley, and basically said, "Well, you know, said to me that they'd warned me, 2 years ago that this might happen because of, my Lemmy type lifestyle." And well, like, I don't know this. Like, I'd really need to be told that at this moment in time when I'm gasping for fucking air,
Yeah.
You know, obviously I've got to make some lifestyle changes. I know this, right? But the one thing I was more concerned about at that moment in time was surviving until the fucking next morning.
Yeah.
Not having second thoughts the next time I order a pizza. Okay. Jesus fucking Christ! I mean, it's just like people. It's like going up to a cancer patient who has smoked in the past and go, "Well, it's because you smoked, you know." Well, that's don't you think they realise that this has been nasty?
Yeah.
People are just.
I mean, obviously, an event like that's gonna change your perception pretty quickly.
Yeah. Anyways, talking about death, Stephen Hawkins died this week, a genius of our time, I'd add, and a great role model for disabled people.
Yeah.
But his death was overshadowed by the former presenter of Bullseye, Jim Bowen. And I wonder if when Jim Bowen got to the pearly gates, St. Peter said to him, put his arm around him and said, "Right, Jim, lad, look what you could have won." And there was a fucking motorboat there. Anybody who's watched Bullseye would get that gag.
Yes. Yes, I was talking about Jim. I mean, because Bullseye, I mean, it's an interesting one for me. I mean, it is to me like the quintessential British game show.
Yes.
Like, it does not get more British than Bullseye. It's all about darts, featuring, beery, drunken, fat bastards playing darts, getting like naffle money, and you know the winner. And if they win, they end up getting a speedboat, even though they live in like, I don't know, bloody Hampshire.
No, more like, you know, Walsall in the Midlands, you know, nowhere near a fucking marina. But but it was always a fucking speedboat, wasn't it? You know.
Yeah, speedboat, like speedboat, motorhome. It's funny. There's actually there's a 30-minute compilation on YouTube of pretty much all the let's take a look at what you could have won moments. And it's like, well, that's just one of the many reasons why YouTube is such a great thing, really. At the end of the day,
yeah, I'm sure there are. I'm sure if people want to get the flavour of Bullseye, because it hasn't been on television for years, I'm sure there are full episodes on YouTube.
Oh,
you know,
yes,
this was the show. What was it? Sunday afternoon on ITV, and it's a cult classic.
It is. Still gets repeated all the time on Challenge TV. Who also tried to make a few years back. They tried to make a new version with Dave Spikey,
right?
Which was, well, it's all right. I mean, Dave Spikey's all right, but it wasn't the same.
Have you seen? There was also in the 80s. There was this. I forgot the name of the presenter. It was an Irish guy. A thing called Catchphrase.
Oh yeah, Roy Walker.
Yeah, and there's this famous episode where, you know, they had this, like, basically it was like a big screen, and I had like squares in it which would reveal.
The big catchphrase.
I'm sorry, I'm starting to laugh now because I remember this.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Right, yeah, the one where the character looked like he was giving a blowjob.
Yeah. And everyone was just, and everyone, like, they weren't trying to hide it, and everyone was just laughing their head off. They couldn't not, because it's like, it's even worse than that. It's like, because Mr. Chips, which is the name of, like, the character, like the mascot of the show, who'd often appear, he's like tipping his hat, like, and winking, and then his hand looks like he's wanking something. And then the funniest one was when one of it was revealed to be a snake. Like there's head of snake, and the snake's going like smiling and moving, and it's just and it looks so rude. And ultimately, the catchphrase was "Snake Charmer," and that was the solution. Snake Charmer, just one of those perfect spontaneous moments. And it aired, and they didn't edit it out. It aired live on telly, or it aired on the show. I've seen the full episode
but
a couple of
times. All laughing because everyone could see the gag.
Yeah, it's just a brilliant moment in TV history. I mean, Bullseye,
and then there's the other one from Countdown.
Yeah,
where Carol Vorderman, she's getting out the letters. It's give me a consonant C, give me a vowel U, give me another consonant N.
Then, fortunately, the fourth letter was something else.
Yes.
There was also one time there was wankers was one of the things that they came up with, and there's like, well, I don't know how to say this, but wankers, like for 7, like was what they said, and then the other guy, and Richard Whiteley. The late great Richard Whiteley. I was oh yes, wankers, very good. And how about you? Like to the other contestant, and the other contestant goes, yep, pair of wankers. Got the same. But Bullseye, Jim Bowen used to dine out on like a really great story, because what they do on Bullseye is like the main game, like the let's take a look what you could have won game, was a gamble. So you had the choice of either taking like the money and the prizes you'd won home, or gambling to get you didn't know what it was, like is the mystery star prize. It was like, could be something good like a holiday somewhere, or a new car, or it could be a motorhome or a speedboat, or something along those lines. And there was this one episode where apparently like the first because normally it'd be like 3 teams of 2, and the first team to go out were these 2 Irishmen. And apparently they were pissed out of their heads. And so they went out very quickly, and then they went back to the green room or whatever and continued drinking. And so the first couple, the couple that actually won, they get the choice to gamble or to leave, and they chose to leave. And so in that instance, they then go to the second team, the one that finished second, and they give them the choice. Do you gamble all the money, or do you leave? And they chose to leave. So they win on the third team, the two drunken Irishmen, who by this point are absolutely smashed, apparently. And they've got to gamble. I mean, they haven't won anything anyway, I think. So they get there, and to win the star prize, you've got to get 101 from 6 darts, and the teams consist of a non-darts player and a darts player, and the non-darts player goes first.
I remember it, yeah.
So they step up, then throws the first dart, treble 20. And then another 20, and I think another treble 20. And they win. Despite being utterly paralytic. I mean, Jim Bowen tells the story a hell of a lot better than, obviously, I just did, but... Here's one of their show's funny moments. Also had a serial killer appear on it.
Did they?
Yeah. Yes, yes, a serial killer appeared on Bullseye.
Did it?
Yeah, it's I forget his name. I think he was from like the Liverpool area. But he had killed by that point, and I think he would go on to kill 2 more times afterwards. It's kind of a creepy story, and he actually and he did, and the team and the pair that he was in did end up getting to they ended up getting to the final and gambling, but they didn't win it. But yeah, so so this guy is all over the show.
Just think, if one was killed. Oh, there again, he did on Dexter.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, and that episode doesn't get repeated on Challenge TV.
Oh right, yeah. Yeah, just like the one Simpsons episode which doesn't get repeated is the one with the World Trade Center.
Yes, the New York City one, where one of the main gags is it does involve the World Trade Center.
Yeah,
because Homer needs to piss.
It's at the top of one of them. One of the towers. Yeah.
Yeah. Goes all the way to the top of the one. Doesn't have a toilet.
So yeah, talking about serial killers, I was going to recommend a film for people to check out. It's a bit of a cult classic, British cult classic, I'd add, called Sightseers.
Yeah.
And this is basically, what if Ken Loach directed a serial killer film? So it's all rather earnest and real, you know, and very British. And basically, it's a bunch. Sorry, not a bunch. A couple who are caravanners, basically doing a tour of northern England, visiting places like the Pencil Museum, wherever that is, and you know, various other very geeky and nerdy places, which you know, which sort of beardy types do, right? And they get pissed off with various people being rude and start killing them. And it's a very black comedy, and it's very funny.
So sad, very British.
Directed by Ben Wheatley, who then went on to direct an adaptation of J.G. Bullard's High Rise, and they had been trying to make that film for many, many years. To be honest, I always thought that it might be impossible to make a film of it, considering the way it's written.
Right.
I've read the book, and it's basically written in, how do I say, it's like a stream of consciousness.
Yeah, kind of like an Alice sort of thing.
Yeah, and so basically it's a sort of satire on like how people in a high-rise start murdering one another.
Yeah,
and sort of, regress to sort of like a savage sort of state. It is a satire, you know, but I thought it was actually quite well made.
Yeah.
And then he went on to direct Free Fire. Now, this is some people said this was a bit of a gimmicky film because everyone has always said, well, what if there was a film which was just a gunfight? Well, basically, this is it. But it's actually very well done.
Right.
And I came out. When did it came out? 2016. Yeah. I have seen it, and it's very good. And I do recommend people go and check it out. Stars Cillian Murphy and that South African guy whose name I should know, who was in District 9 and played Murdoch in the A-Team. He's always really manic. Sorry?
Oh, no, I was thinking of the one guy. Yeah, no,
no, not right. Yeah, he was in District 9. At some point in the future, we will talk about District 9 because it is one of the best sci-fi films you'll ever see.
Yes,
brilliant film. But not at the moment because, to be honest, my brain isn't fully compassed today.
Yes,
for good reasons. Anyways, one of the things I did do in hospital, because I was bored more than anything else, was I did go and investigate some Android shoot 'em ups. As Kim can tell you, when it comes to shoot 'em ups, I absolutely lap them up.
Yes, very much so.
And I found out you can get the full version of 1942 on Android, which I think is one of the best shoot 'em ups. And considering that it's over 30 years old now,
yeah,
very old. People still talk about it. Also, R-Type. Now we should explain. 1942 is a more traditional vertical shooter. That's when you have the craft shooting the enemy fighters from below. R-Type is a horizontal shooter. Now, I know some people say, well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is that the vertical shooters came from games like Space Invaders and Galaxian.
Yes, Gallagher.
The horizontal shooters came from stuff like Defender. Well, actually, most of them are basically, versions of Defender.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. That was kind of like the first one.
Yeah. Now, R-Type is seen as one of the best.
It is.
And it is very, And there's the full version on Android. You've also got Raiden, which is another vertical shooter. That on Android. And you do get a selection of different versions of Raiden because it costs $5.
Yeah. Are they easy to play with like the touchscreen controls and that?
I would say R-Type's actually a bit more tricky. The vertical ones are easy because you just do with your thumb when you're holding it like that. Yeah. But the horizontal ones, you sort of have to hold the phone up like that, landscape.
Yeah.
And it's a bit more tricky.
That's a bit wanky.
Yeah. Now, of course, I have been a little sceptical of Android games because obviously I have played Clash of Clans in the past, and we all know that you get to that stage where you can't go any further unless you buy gems or coins.
Yes, pay some money.
Yeah. Well, there are definitely vertical shooters like that, and other shoot 'em ups. However, there are a fair few out there which are free, but they either just show an advert between levels, or they will either you have a choice of buying a gem or watching an advert. Okay. And I always watch the advert. I don't have a problem. I know some people would say, well, look, that they complain about the adverts. Well, don't you watch TV? I mean, you have adverts on ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's fewer and fewer people do watch TV these days.
Well, that is true. I mean, the one that I always made me laugh was that you paid a subscription to Sky and then had to watch adverts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I mean, if at least when you pay for a game on Android, you don't have to watch the adverts. But, if you want something for free, you're going to have to, give in return. And watching an advert for a few seconds, I don't think is too much for a decent game. If the game's shit, I can understand it. But hey, look, you download a game for free, you can quickly uninstall it. Don't be so fussy. I mean, yes, I don't mind paying a few quid for a game if I can, so I don't have to do the adverts, right? But, if you want something for free, you've got to give a bit, there's no such thing as a free lunch, as someone once said.
Yes. I've been actually watching something for a change. I've been watching Bojack Horseman.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you told me about this. Yeah, on Netflix.
Yeah, I've finally decided what I'm kind of doing is I've finally decided to put Netflix on my mobile, and I kind of use it as like good motivation to go to the gym. So it's like, because I used when I used to go to the gym, I used to have music on, but I'm really bad with music, in terms of listening to it when I'm out. I'm one of those people who just always have my phone out and be skipping through songs. I think, no, I don't want to listen to that. Don't want to listen to that all the time, which can be kind of take you out of the moment, out of the zone when you're at the gym, just trying to get through a treadmill session. So I've been kind of starting watching BoJack Horseman as a way of doing that, because I can just it goes sequentially and each episode lasts 25 minutes, and it's it's a really funny show. I've kind of started watching it from the beginning, and even though people have said, well, the first season does take a bit of time to really get off the ground, I'm really enjoying it. I mean, for anyone who's not seen it, it's about this actor who just so happens to be a horse, and in the 90s he was the star of a hit show called Horsing Around, which was a generic American family sitcom where he is the surrogate father of 3 orphaned kids. And that's him, and it kind of follows him in the present day. He's rich, he's got loads of money, but he doesn't really have to do anything. He just relaxes in the life of a faded celebrity. And so yeah, it's kind of I almost kind of think of it. Oh, and of course he is also, as it happens, a horse. He's actually a horse, a talking, walking horse. I don't know, kind of Mr. Fred. Emma.
Oh, and God, I hated that. I've always hated that. Sorry, I just don't. Do you ever remember the Harry Enfield piss take of that,
Mr. Dead? He's dead, of course. But yeah, so yeah, and it's not that's something that everyone can pass on, because it's the world is full of talking, walking animals. There's cats, fish. One of the other guys is a dog, his kind of who's Bojack's rival in many ways, who was also a 90s star. But it's kind of I almost kind of think of it's Curb Your Enthusiasm, only animated and with a horse. It's really funny. If it's not something you've seen, I mean, I imagine quite a few people have seen it, but I definitely recommend it. And it's got who's the guy? I think it's Will Arnett who voices Bojack, and it's got Alison Brie in it, Paul F. Tompkins, Amy Sedaris, Aaron Paul's in it. And they even kind of make jokes Aaron Paul, obviously, who's most famous for Jesse Pinkman. They kind of even make the odd joke surrounding that. And yes, it's such a funny show. Really recommended.
Well, my recommendation for people, something for people to check out on Netflix if they haven't, is Altered Carbon, based on the sci-fi book by Richard Morgan. It was a trilogy of first of a trilogy of books. Basically, the first book was the best. It's sort of it's sort of a sci-fi noir, and the whole concept is, what if in the future there is no such thing as real death? Basically, your whole personality can be downloaded into a chip.
Right.
And so basically bodies becomes what they refer to as sleeves.
Yeah.
Anyways, I do recommend people. I always thought that this would be coming to the big screen, actually. But Netflix have made a series out of it, and I have been pretty faithful, few exceptions, to the novel.
Yeah.
I always want. I mean, as I said, there's a trilogy of novels. The other two novels are pretty different. I mean, the second one sort of deals with war, and the last one sort of revolution. My only criticism of Richard Morgan is he's got some good ideas, but does take a while to get to the point.
Yeah.
The only book I can remember reading of his, which I thought was really good from beginning to end and was a joy to read, was Market Forces. And I'm actually wondering if they will bring that to the screen, because you could tell that he originally had written that as a screenplay, just because it was, it was pretty. There wasn't. It was, how do I say this? Pretty lean in a good way. You know, you get the point pretty quickly. The way I'd explain Market Forces is, well, it's sort of Wall Street cross between a sort of combination of Wall Street and Mad Max. Basically, in the near future, the way business disputes are settled is basically people ramming each other off the road.
Sounds.
You have to read the book to sort of get it, but it's actually, you think, oh god, this is really fucking far-fetched idea. When you read it as the whole sort of reasoning as to why this happens in the future, it actually makes a lot of sense. You have to read the book to fully understand it yourself. Yeah. But that's the one Richard Morgan book I do suggest people read, because I actually think that that's a pretty accessible book, because there's not too much flab to it. But yeah, if you get a chance, check out Altered Carbon on Netflix. Now, one other thing I thought we might talk about, somebody had sort of floated the idea of talking about. Sorry if I'm sounding a bit repetitive tonight, but me and Kim were sort of having a chat the other day about people in film who didn't quite realize come to the their full potential. Yeah,
almost like
and we were talking about Michael Cimino. Is that how you pronounce it?
Michael Cimino.
Cimino.
Yeah. Now,
the director of The Deer Hunter. However, he wasn't quite a one-hit wonder. He had directed before that Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, starring Clint Eastwood, and Low Bridges, which is a great film, I'd add, and has also co-starring George Kennedy, who's an absolute who's a right bastard in it. I know a lot of people are going to remember George Kennedy from
Police Squad,
the Naked Gun films, and also from Airport 80, one of the worst films.
God, yeah. Airport 81. Yeah. Kind of says.
No, it was Airport 80 Concorde.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a really terrible film. Basically, they got this fucking chasing guided fucking missile chasing Concorde. And George Kennedy gets rid of it. He leans out the window and shoots a flare. Yeah. Oh, fuck it off. Yeah. Look, just don't even think about watching it. It is utter shite. Okay, really is. I mean, this is why we had Airplane, to get rid of those kind of films.
The 70s disaster flick.
So, yeah. Well, yeah. Michael, you pronounce it.
Michael Cimino, who obviously is most famous for The Deer Hunter, which and
most infamous for Heaven's Gate.
Yes, and then because after the success of The Deer Hunter, which was one of the biggest films of the year, won the Best Picture and all that shit. Yes, he was basically given that contract. Oh yeah, well, make this film and it's as much money as you want. And so the film ended up lasting about Heaven's Gate, ended up lasting about 4 hours, made no sense, and virtually
cost about $40 million to make, which in 1980 was a lot of money for a film.
And basically bankrupted United Artists. I think they had to sell up after that.
I think they sold up to Coca-Cola, didn't they?
Something like that, yeah. I don't know if it's Coca-Cola, but yeah, it was something along those lines. They just had to, had to do something because he took away all their money, and that was in like 1979. So that's pretty much right in like the transition from like the director's period of Hollywood, like the sort of Easy Riders and Raging Bulls, like that book.
And the Wild Bunch and The Exorcist, and basically when people went to the cinema more because they were attracted to who was directing the film than who was starring in the film.
Yes,
right.
And it kind of went more into like the blockbusters.
In those days, you had people like Sam Peckinpah,
Kubrick.
Basically, they went to the studio, said, "We want to make this film." And they go, "Well, here's $10 million, go make it," right? And they let them go on with it, right? Yeah. After Heaven's Gate, that didn't happen because then marketing, the money men really did get involved because, a studio had been bankrupted by,
one director's whims.
However, it wasn't the only film which sort of ended that period.
No, there were others. I mean,
yes. The other film is Sorcerer.
Sorcerer, William Friedkin.
Yeah, yes, William Friedkin. I should explain. This is kind of ironic. The film is sort of, Jaws started the sort of summer blockbuster thing in Hollywood, okay? But it really was Star Wars which sort of really made it, okay?
Yes.
Now, William Friedkin had been on a roll with The French Connection and The Exorcist. French Connection particularly. I've always said about The Exorcist, I can see why people like this film. But personally, it's overrated. And the reason I think it's perfectly overrated is because I don't believe in the devil. It doesn't scare me. Right? But I can see why it is a good film, right? I understand that. So the studio went, well, what do you want to direct? Oh, well, I'd like to remake this French film, and we're going to do a lot of stunt work with these trucks going across this really wobbly bridge.
Yes, it's a remake of a remake of a French classic, Wages of Fear.
Wages of Sin, isn't it?
Wages
a remake
of Fear.
Of?
Wages of Fear, which is by Henri Georges Clouzot.
Yeah, and basically it's about these truck drivers who have to drive this really volatile substance,
explosive substances.
Yeah. Anyways, this film cost like millions and millions. In fact, I think it was financed by 2 studios.
Yeah.
Right. And it was released in the same year as Star Wars. And this is significant because Star Wars obviously made a lot of money, and Sorcerer didn't. And Star Wars also made a lot of money when it came to things like marketing. Right. This was the first. It's really the first film which really sort of tapped into all that. And so from then on with Hollywood, they weren't just thinking about the film itself. They were thinking about, marketing and, can we tap this demographic for revenue and blah, blah, can we sell this product to someone, in relation to the film? And it started all that.
To think that they could have had like a Sorcerer board game. It'd be like Operation. Just carefully move the truck, and then and then it falls.
But Sorcerer sort of ended, and then Heaven's Gate ended that era in Hollywood. And to me, the 1970s was a great era in Hollywood because it was the end of censorship, and you had a lot of directors having a lot of freedom. Do you really think that Sam Peckinpah would get The Wild Bunch made now? I don't know if he would.
No, it'd be a tough one.
I should explain to people. should explain to people, if you ever hear people talk about Westerns, the greatest Western, well, we disagree about this. I know you think it's Once Upon a Time in the West, but I think it is The Wild Bunch. And the reason why is The Wild Bunch is about the death of the Wild West. It's right. It's set right before the First World War.
Yeah.
And it's about old cowboys looking for one last score, basically.
Yes.
And it's infamous for its violence. To be honest, there's violence at the beginning of the film, and there's violence at the end. I don't remember there being too much in between. But the significance is that the end scene is called the Death Walk. You know, basically, I won't explain the plot too much, but it's pretty obvious how this is going to turn out when William excuse me.
Yeah, William Holden
basically goes, "Let's go," and you know that the shit's going to go down. What you don't expect is a gunfight, which is what's still considered one of the most violent gunfights ever. I mean, this was also the first film you actually saw someone get their throat slit. The story goes that Sam Peckinpah had directed Major Dundee, which at the time had the biggest entourage of stuntmen on set, and had really come to blows with Charlton Heston, to the point where Charlton Heston basically chased him around with a sword. It didn't do well at the cinema, and so for a while he was out of favour. But then Warner Brothers approached him with this project and let him get on with it. They didn't expect that. They basically. They went down the basically Warner Brothers had this jaunt for film journos, where basically it was some place in Mexico, and it was the premiere of The Wild Bunch. And I don't think any of the Warner executives actually had seen it before. You know, they showed it to the journos, and everyone was like, "What the?" This really broke the mold. This was still the 1960s, right at the end of the 60s.
It's like just after. I mean, Bonnie and Clyde is like one of the first ones that kind of explored like that, and I think Wild Bunch came just after. Yeah,
and basically all these journos went, "What the fuck?" And basically Sam Peckinpah and Warren Oates and William Holden were all there, and they were all wearing sunglasses because they were all hungover. Because these guys were. You think about drinkers now. Fuck me. I'll tell you a story in a minute about Sam Peckinpah. Basically, there was a lot of gasps to this film when it was first shown. But there were some film critics, I think Pauline Keith was one of them, who realised what Sam Peckinpah was trying to do with this.
Yeah, Pauline Keith loved The Wild Bunch.
Yeah, Peckinpah, he was trying to show the consequences of violence. That's what it was. Peckinpah had been in the US Army during the Second World War, and I think he was one of the first group of soldiers to come across Belsen concentration camp and saw the horrors. And it really had an effect on him. Someone also said he was involved in a car accident, and this is why a lot of the gunfights are in slow motion, because he had said, like, when something violent happens, to you, it always happens in slow motion, which is kind of true. Right? When you have, they say the life flashes before your eyes. It always does in slow motion.
Fight or flight kicks in.
Yeah, right. And The Wild Bunch for me is the greatest Western ever made. I know John Wayne hated it. Well, fuck John Wayne. He was a fascist. I've never liked John Wayne. So if you haven't seen it, do see it. Because it is one of the greatest films ever made, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with that one.
And Sam Peckinpah never bettered it. Yeah, Cross the Vine, which we'll talk about some other time, came close, but I still don't think it's on par. It's still a good film. So we also talk about, while we're here, talk about Once Upon a Time in the West, because you think it's the greatest Western ever made.
Now, Once Upon a Time in the West is it's a very I mean, obviously it's directed by Sergio Leone, who obviously known for Good, Bad and the Ugly, the Dollars trilogy, all that sort of thing. Once Upon a Time
and also because we also must have mentioned Once Upon a Time in America,
yes,
which was his last film.
His last film, which took about 11 years to make. Yes, Once Upon a Time in the West is also about the... it is also like Peckinpah's film about the death of the West. It is set, well, not right at the end of the West, but the death of the West is represented in the film through the railroad, which is a very important motif. The film starts out almost like on the rails, like in like the train station, with like this 10-minute scene where almost nothing happens, like no words are said virtually. It's all build up.
But yeah, this is really. But you know something's going to happen because there's an awful lot of suspense.
There is so much suspense, even just through all like these little Foley things, and then finally the train pulls in. Charles Bronson gets off it, and I mean it's the sort of thing that like he'd done through. Like Sergio Leone had done for all his career, where you have this great build-up to these lightning-quick moments of violence, which is kind of what happens there. But the other thing with Once Upon a Time in the West that also really stands out, I mean, aside from, well, amazing cinematography, as you would expect. I mean, it's a tribute to so many other Western films, things like Shane, High Noon, and a lot of stuff was shot in Monument Valley as well, where John Ford worked on so many of his films. The music, it's almost it's one of the most operatic films, and all the characters, like, they have their own different themes, and someone said about it, it's an opera where the arias aren't sung, they're stead. And actually they would play the music, like the music was actually made for the film before they actually shot the film, and they would play it on set. And what they would do is they would get all the movements like spot on. And as far as cast goes, it's the cast itself has a lot of symbols of like Western films, and some of them used in very subversive ways. I mean, it's probably most famous for having Henry Fonda.
Yeah, and the story I heard is the studio did not want Henry Fonda to make that film.
Oh no, they really didn't.
Henry Fonda had always been the good guy.
Yeah,
and in this, he's an utter bastard.
He is. He is. I mean, Henry Fonda. This is the guy who's famous for Young Mr. Lincoln. Like, he's played Abraham Lincoln on screen.
12 Angry Men.
12 Angry Men. Like, a great, moral character, always virtuous. And in Once Upon a Time in the West, he plays Frank, and in his first scene, he shoots up an entire family.
Yeah.
He is an unbelievable bastard, but both him and the character that Charles Bronson plays, who is simply called Harmonica, and says about 10 words, I think, in the film. They're both kind of symbols of a dying West, and
also Ben Daniels. Is his name Ben Daniels?
Jason Robards.
That's him. Yeah,
yeah, he's in it.
Yeah.
Claudia Cardinale, and a lot of like Western character actors like Woody Strode and Paul Elam are in it for like they're in the opening scene, who are famous for like playing like small like Western parts. No, it's a fantastic film. It's 2.5 to nearly like 3 hours well spent. The showdowns, and I think that something that often ties together a lot of like the great westerns, like for me, is that a lot of them are kind of set in that late western period, going back to The Wild Bunch, which is right at the end. Once Upon a Time in the West, which is close to the end, but the end is coming via the railroad, which is constantly being built throughout the film. Like, that's kind of where Claudia Cardinale comes in, as she kind of takes care of like the building of the railroad, while Frank and who the people who he is working for is trying to stop it, or trying to take a piece of it for themselves. But those two films, and another film which I love, a more modern western, which is one of my favourites, is The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Which I think is a superb film with Brad Pitt as Jesse James in what I think is probably his best performance.
Yeah, it's a very art house film. I'd warn people. Don't expect massive shoot ups.
No, not at all. But it's another dying West. film.
Well, another Western I'd recommend is the one which Clint Eastwood doesn't talk about, and that's High Plains Drifter.
Oh, High Plains Drifter is so good.
Now, I'm not going to reveal too much about this film, except it's exceptionally dark.
Yeah, it is like one of the darkest Westerns.
Yeah, and Clint Eastwood refuses to talk about it.
Mm.
And in the first 10 minutes, you'll see why. Even I was shocked.
Yes. I mean, another good end of the West like product, even though it's a video game, is of course Red Dead Redemption. I mean, that's set right at the end of the West.
There's due to be a sequel of this year, isn't there?
There is, yes, there is going to be a sequel, which I'm very excited about because I love that game.
Isn't that considered the first what's it called? Sorry,
Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah, isn't that considered the best open world video game?
Pretty much, yes. It's right up there. Only trouble is, you can play it on Xbox One and PS4 now, I think. Yes, you can. You can play it like backwards compatibility. It's never been available for PC, just because of the code. It's considered like impossible to bring over, unlike all the other games.
Yeah, I was also going to mention, there has been they were actually thinking, I heard a story, they were actually thinking about remaking The Wild Bunch, but it would be sanitized now, okay?
Yes.
That's the problem, right? It would be sanitized. Yeah, right? Yeah. Don't touch it. Don't even think about it. However,
please.
Yeah. There was a kind of remake by Walter Hill. Now, Walter Hill did actually work with Sam Peckinpah on The Getaway.
Yeah.
The original was Steve McQueen. He wrote co-wrote the script for, but he's always been in awe of Sam Peckinpah, that's obvious. And he did remake it's a homage remake. It's called Extreme Prejudice, made in the 80s with Powers Booth and Michael Ironside. And if you get Powers Booth and Michael Ironside in a film, you know it's going to be a good B film.
Yep.
There was a guy I used to know. He said if it has Powers Booth in it, it's a B film. Yeah. Powers Booth was, a B film, a great B film actor.
Yes, a legendary B film actor.
Yeah. It's not nowhere near as good as The Wild Bunch, but it's a good B film. It's 90 minutes of hokum. It's got Nick Nolte in as well. It's all right.
Yes, it's the sort of thing that if it's on telly, which it probably won't be, but if it is on telly, may as well give it a watch. There are worse ways to spend your time.
The reason I bring up Walter Hill is to do with one of his more recent films, and it has a connection with us being trans.
Yes.
And that is the
Reassignment.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Assignment, actually, it's called.
Yeah.
I just went to check. I couldn't remember. Someone said it was called Reassignment, but it's actually called The Assignment. Now, I have seen it. Okay, here's the story. Michelle Rodriguez plays, first of all, she plays a male hitman, okay?
Yeah.
And they do go as far as, they have a fling with a prostitute, and of course, there's a prosthetic penis for Michelle Rodriguez. Now, one of the people he kills, this, I might be trans, even I'm getting confused here. This hitman kills is the brother of a plastic surgeon who's a brilliant plastic surgeon played by Sigourney Weaver. And as revenge, Sigourney Weaver drugs this hitman and makes him undergo gender reassignment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very far-fetched, okay? But, anyways, I've seen it. Now, Walter Hill has been on a downward decline pretty much since the 1990s. The last film I sort of remember half liking, it was either Trespass or Last Man Standing. And and even those weren't, as good as, say, Southern Comfort or 48 Hours. But the assignment, I know it caused a lot. The reason I'm bringing it up, because we're both trans, obviously, it also caused an outcry in the trans community because it was exploitative. Hey, a lot of B films are exploitative, okay? But do I think that this film is transphobic? No. And the reason being that the character that Michelle Rodriguez plays, once they've undergone gender assignment, they want to go back to living as a guy.
Yeah,
there's none of that kinky stuff that all of a sudden they start liking being a girl. No, this is not, forced femininity fetish, fucking flick.
Yeah.
I have to say, it's not brilliant, but it is a better film from Walter Hill than stuff he's done recently. Yes. Okay? So that's what I will say.
Cool. Well,
anyways,
I'm back. Yeah. I think we're just about out of time.
Yeah.
So it's been cool
seeing you.
We'll be seeing you. I've got stuff coming out. We did release a Camden vlog as well, a couple yesterday, which you can check out. We go around like a boot store, the UK's oldest boot store, where they do Dr. Martens and all that. We went around an American candy shop, a comics book store, Soho and all other sorts of things, and I've got a video about No One Lives Forever coming on the main channel. And if you want to read Sophia's writings, you can go to sophiabofa.xyz. And one last thing I'd add. Depending on my health, there might be a Southend special coming soon. Hopefully. Fingers crossed about that. But so that will do it for this week, and we shall see you next week. So, shall see you later. Bye!
Bye!